Why does one name keep appearing again and again in the story of Israel? As an enemy that simply would not disappear? From the days of the judges to the rise of kings, one people stood as a constant threat, powerful, organized, and relentless. The Philistines. They were not just occasional invaders. They were a dominating force that challenged Israel's faith, controlled their strength, and shaped the course of their history. From Samson's battles to the legendary showdown between David and Goliath, their presence is impossible to ignore. But who were they? Really, where did they come from? And why did their conflict with Israel last for generations? The story of the Philistines is far more than ancient warfare. It is a powerful narrative of struggle, influence, and the unfolding purpose of God in the midst of opposition. The Philistines burst onto the historical scene around the 12th century BC, part of a mysterious confederation known as the Sea Peoples. These were seafaring raiders who swept across the Mediterranean, toppling empires and reshaping the map of the ancient Near East. While the mighty Egyptian Empire managed to repel them, they allowed some of these groups, including the Philistines, to settle along the southern coastal plain of Canaan. This strip of land, from Gaza to Ashdod, would become known as the lands of the Philistines. The Bible first mentions them in the book of Genesis, but their dramatic entry into Israel's story begins during the tumultuous era of the Judges. They weren't just migrants. They were conquerors who brought with them advanced technology and a fiercely organized military culture, setting the stage for a conflict that would last for centuries. The conflict between Israel and the Philistines was not merely a border dispute. It was a clash of civilizations, a spiritual and geopolitical struggle for control of Canaan. The Israelites, a loose confederation of tribes united by their covenant with Yahweh, were trying to possess the land God had promised them. The Philistines, on the other hand, were invaders with superior military technology and a political structure centered around 5 major city-states: Ashdod, Ashkelon, Ekron, Gath, and Gaza. This pentapolis gave them a strategic advantage, allowing them to coordinate their attacks and exert control over the region. At the heart of the conflict was a spiritual battle. The Philistines worshipped a pantheon of gods, with Dagon, a deity of grain and fertility, being their chief god. Their temples were centers of power, and their victories were seen as proof of their god's strength, posing a direct challenge to the faith of Israel and the sovereignty of their one true God. What made the Philistines so formidable was their mastery of iron. While the Israelites were still largely in the Bronze Age, the Philistines had entered the Iron Age, giving them a decisive military edge. Their chariots, iron swords, and spears were far superior to the simpler weapons of the Israelite army. The Bible tells us in 1 Samuel that there was not a single blacksmith to be found in all of Israel because the Philistines controlled the industry, forcing the Israelites to come to them to sharpen their tools. This technological monopoly was also a tool of economic and political oppression, keeping Israel weak and subservient. Their society was highly organized and militaristic, built for expansion and dominance. They weren't just raiding neighbors. They were empire builders, aiming to subjugate the hill country of Israel and control the vital trade routes that ran through their territory. This era of Philistine dominance reached its peak during the time of Samson. The book of Judges paints a dark picture of this period, stating that the Lord delivered them into the hands of the Philistines for 40 years. Israel was spiritually adrift and militarily oppressed. Into this desperate situation, God raised up Samson, a man of superhuman strength, whose life was a one-man war against the Philistine lords. Samson's story, filled with personal flaws and spectacular feats, is a microcosm of the larger conflict. He single-handedly tore through their armies, but also fell victim to their deceptions, most famously through Delilah. His tragic end, pulling down the temple of Dagon upon himself and thousands of Philistines, was a final, explosive act of defiance. Yet, even this incredible display of power did not break the Philistine grip. It showed just how deeply entrenched their power was, setting the stage for an even greater confrontation. The ultimate showdown between Israel and the Philistines arrived with a single, defining moment. For 40 days, the Philistine army stood arrayed against the terrified soldiers of Israel in the valley of Elah, and every day, their champion, a giant named Goliath from the city of Gath, strode out to mock Israel and their God. It was the embodiment of Philistine power, physically intimidating, clad in impenetrable armor, and wielding unstoppable weapons. No Israelite soldier dared to face him. Then, a young shepherd boy named David, armed with nothing but a sling, with 5 smooth stones and unshakable faith in God, stepped onto the battlefield. His victory was not just a military triumph, it was a spiritual turning point. David's defeat of Goliath shattered the illusion of Philistine invincibility and announced the arrival of a new leader for Israel. This moment marked the beginning of the end for Philistine dominance. Under King David's leadership, the Israelites would finally go on the offensive, systematically breaking the power of the Pentapalace and securing their nation's borders. The constant threat posed by the Philistines had a profound and lasting impact on the nation of Israel. It was their persistent aggression that ultimately unified the scattered tribes. Faced with an organized, technologically superior enemy they could not defeat as a loose confederation, the people of Israel cried out for a king. They wanted a leader who could unite them and lead them in battle, just like the other nations. In 1 Samuel, they demand, "Give us a king to lead us." While this request stemmed from a lack of faith in God's direct rule, God used this situation to establish the Israelite monarchy. The Philistine threat was the catalyst that transformed Israel from a collection of tribes into a unified kingdom under Saul, and later, its greatest king, David. In a remarkable twist of divine irony, the very enemy that sought to destroy Israel became the instrument God used to forge it into a strong, centralized nation, ready to fulfill its destiny on the world stage. So, what can we learn from the long and bitter story of the Philistines? This ancient conflict offers us timeless lessons about faith and perseverance. The Philistines represent the Goliaths in our own lives, the overwhelming challenges, the persistent struggles, and the intimidating forces that seem impossible to overcome. Their story reminds us that worldly power, technology, and strength are fleeting. For centuries, the Philistines seemed invincible, yet they were ultimately defeated not by a greater army, but by the faith of a shepherd boy and the sovereign hand of God. The narrative teaches us that God often uses the very pressures and conflicts we face to shape us, to unify us, and to drive us toward His purpose. It's in the valley of struggle, facing our enemies, that our faith is truly forged. The story of Israel and the Philistines is a powerful testament that no enemy, no matter how strong, can stand against the purposes of God. His plan will prevail. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the world of the Philistines. If you found this story compelling and want to uncover more powerful truths from the Bible, be sure to subscribe to Bible Stories and Insight. We're dedicated to bringing you deep scriptural understanding and historical insights that bring the Word of God to life. Hit that subscribe button and join our community. We'll see you in the next video.